In FPL, if you only pick the popular players, then the downside is you're unlikely to ever get a big green arrow, but the upside is you should never get a big red. So a lot of the popular players did very poorly this last game week 12, and so I got a red arrow, but it was a small red arrow, and anyone concentrating on popular players probably got a red arrow. But I think that's okay because we do seem to be getting more green arrows than red arrows, so hopefully the general trend is going to be up. But I guess over the course of the season, we're going to find out. So in this video, this is for game week 13. I'm going to look at the popular players, the movements, and which ones I think are worth considering buying or not buying. There's a lot of chat online about people playing their free hit this game week. I'm not going to play my free hit, and personally I don't think it's a good idea. I think they're just thinking I've got to use it between now and game week 19. This is one of the best game weeks, which may be true, but maybe you just don't need to play it at all and just let it go. If you don't need it, I think it's okay to just ignore it. So I'm currently thinking if I play it, it's probably going to be game week 19, or if games get postponed, then that's the week I'm going to play it. Anyway, enough about me. Let's look at the popular players. This week I thought I'd start by looking at the net transfers. The net transfers being how many people have bought a player minus how many have sold the player. So the biggest mover, unsurprisingly so far for game week 13, is Gabriel. It's been sold by nearly 500,000 managers so far. So he's obviously a defender. So the biggest defender being brought in is Munoz. He's been brought in by 226,000. He got a good score. Palace defenders are pretty solid. And the second biggest is Timber, been brought in by 152,000 so far. So that's obviously just a straight swap, Gabriel to Timber really on that front. Regarding midfielders, Semenyo's been sold by nearly 300,000, 295,000 net transfers out. Now he has blanked for the last 4 game weeks, albeit he didn't even play last game week. Hopefully he's going to be back now. Their fixtures are okay. He's still very popular. I'm not intending to sell Semenyo just yet, but he is a popular sell. And then the midfielder being brought in the most is Eze at 273. So it seems like a lot of people are quite possibly just simply moving Semenyo to Eze. Regarding forwards, João Pedro is the largest sold, 207,000 out. They're playing Arsenal this game week. And the forward being brought in the most is Thiago up here with 302,000. So he's ever so popular. He's the most popular net transfer in at the moment. So I wouldn't be surprised if by the time we reach game week 13, Thiago is actually more popular than João Pedro. But at the moment, João Pedro is still more popular. Now we'll look at the ownership chart. The x-axis is the ownership level. The y is currently the price. So Haaland is effectively owned by 100% of managers around my rank, which is around the 500k mark. That's where I am. Whatever rank you are, it's not going to be massively different from this, I expect. So there are still actually a few people buying Haaland. They suddenly realise they've not got him. But everyone effectively owns him. And then the next most common forward is Mateta at 54.8%. João Pedro has now fallen all the way down to 40%. And he's going to keep falling. And then we have Thiago's currently at 30%, but he's on the rise. So they're the main forwards. For defenders, Semenyo's falling, but he's still above 70%. So if you don't own Semenyo and he does well, he is going to hurt your rank. And then we have Umbremo. He's currently just over 50%. I know he got booked, did nothing last game week against 10-man Everton, but he's still very, very popular. He's got 4 more game weeks at least, and then he's going to be going off to AFCON. Next midfielder is Saka, 36.6%. And then we have a cluster here between 30 and 20. That's Sarr, Rice, Caicedo, Enzo, Endaya, and Eze. Eze, as you've seen in the previous slide, massively on the rise. If he does anything against Chelsea, he's just going to keep going up, of course. And then for defenders, Senesi is the most popular, just over 50%. So if you don't own him and he does well, that's going to hurt your rank. And then we have Timber up at 45.8%. Then we have these 3 here, which is Munoz, Gehi, and Van de Ven. So all those are between 40 and 50-ish%. Any of those are going to be able to hurt your rank if they do well and you don't own them. Now, there are lots of good players that aren't highly owned, but we don't need to fear them, because if they do well and you don't own them, it doesn't matter. It's just not going to hurt your rank. So, for example, Ekiteke, if magically he does well away to West Ham this game week, he's only owned by 3.4% of managers. He gets 20 points. Okay, that's 0.6 points against me. It really doesn't matter. Whereas if I didn't own Mateta and he got 5 points, that's 2.5 points against me. That's going to hurt my rank a lot more. So it's the highly owned players that are the ones we care about. Or at least I care about this season. So I'm now going to look at who are the highly owned players. What do I think of them? And I'm going to be quite quick on this because these videos were getting too long. And the players I'm showing you are at least 10 from each position, but any that are at least 10% owned at my rank I'm showing. Any that have got at least 100,000 transfers in I'm showing as well. Obviously, we'll start by looking at the goalkeepers. If you've got a playing goalkeeper, it's probably not worth making a transfer. However, if you're free hitting, then choose someone nice. If you're wildcarding, choose someone nice, obviously. If you've got 3 or 4 transfers, then you might want to move a goalkeeper about. But generally, whichever goalkeeper you've got, you're just going to stick with them. Ray is the most popular. That means he's the one that's going to hurt you the most if he does well and you don't own him. However, he really gets more than 6 points, so you don't really need to fear him. But some people would have bought Raya who only had one defender, being Gabriel. Gabriel's out. You now have no defenders. Maybe Raya was the simplest one to get. But when there's a clean sheet, he's probably going to be the lowest scoring of the players at the back for Arsenal. He's down by a net of 10,000 this game week. Pope's holding steady away to Everton. Then he's at home to Spurs. Neither of those are great fixtures, although Spurs haven't been very good recently, I guess. Sanchez at home to Arsenal. He's down by 8,000. Donnarumma's currently up by 20,000. Surprised it's that low. He's at home to Leeds, but he's expensive, 5.7 million, so maybe that's why people aren't going there. And then Petrovic, Bournemouth, 4.5 million, so he's the best 4.5 million keeper at the moment. His next 2 fixtures are Sunderland and Everton. They're all right. Kelleher's at home to Burnley. He's holding steady. Roos is home to Bournemouth. That's perfectly right. Up by just 10,000. Henderson's was at home to Man United. Vicario home to Fulham. Dubravka, got him down as a banker. If you're wildcarding, you need to make sure you've got Dubravka. He's the cheapest playing keeper. Went through that quickly. Basically, whatever keeper you've got, if they're playing, you don't need to waste a transfer on them. And none of the keepers are massively going to hurt you if you don't own them. So Raya, looking at Solo Analytic expectations, they reckon Raya's going to get 3.8 points this game week. If you don't own him, that damages you by minus 1.5 points. The next most damaging are Pope and Sanchez and Donnarumma. They're all at minus 0.4, so they're really not going to hurt you. Don't worry about the keepers. If I was free hitting this week, which I'm not, I would probably go for Donnarumma, I think. Regarding defenders, now that Gabriel's not playing, Senesi's the most important defender. He's highly owned. He's going to hurt you. He's about 50% owned, somewhere around there. He's slightly down by 7,000, but he just consistently tends to get at least 4 points. Sometimes he gets more than that. He's currently 5 million. He's perfectly good. Away to Sunderland this game week. Now, a lot of free hitters won't bother having him. So I think there's going to be a lot of managers that free hit and may even get red arrows because of highly owned players that just happen to do well this game week. So Sunderland Bournemouth, that could be 0-0. Suddenly Senesi's done all right. Timber up by 152,000. Away to Chelsea. But with Arsenal defenders, you pretty much just buy them and play them every game week. So it doesn't matter that they're away to Chelsea. They've then got Brentford, Villa, Wolves, and those fixtures are okay. We then got Guehi and Munoz. Guehi's up by 28,000. Munoz is up by 226,000. And that's because Munoz got, I think, 14 points last game week. Palace tend to be doing all right. They're at home to United, and United couldn't score against 10-man Everton on Monday night. So maybe that's okay. And after that, they got Burnley and Fulham. So Palace players are popular. Virgil van Dijk's down by 19,000 net. Liverpool are just still rubbish. Even though they're on a good run of fixtures, people are not going to Liverpool players. because they're just no good. And even those that are free hitting, it's like, are they even going to get any Liverpool players? I think some are buying them because they feel a bit obliged, we should do, but they're just not good this season at all. Van de Ven, he's actually up by 19,000 net transfers, which I think is amazing. Maybe it's partly because he's only 4.8 million, so it's quite cheap. His total score is quite good because he has had a couple of good game weeks, but Spurs aren't very good. However, they are at home to Fulham this game week. There could be something in there. And then Newcastle, Brentford, Forest, any of those they could get a clean sheet, but it is Spurs, so they could also let in some soft goals. Then we have Cucurella. He did very well in Europe last night against Barcelona. He's up by 13,000, but he's at home to Arsenal, so I wouldn't be buying him this game week. Certainly wouldn't be buying him on a free hit. Richards, another Palace defender. He's alright, only 4.6. Chalobah and Richards, they're both up by just 4,000. Calafroy's being dumped slightly by 33,000 net. So if I was wildcarding this game week, I would probably get in defence Senesi, Timber, Guehi, Munoz, and that would be it. And then some cheap defender that's just going to sit on my bench. And then the second page of defenders, these are bench warmers, Mukulele, Sunderland. Sunderland have been good. So some weeks you may want to play him, but he is lowly owned. So you kind of don't need to worry about him. He's fine to just be sitting on your bench. Then Electric Steve, Rodon, Goodmanson. And then, of course, Gabriel. I'm still showing him because he's still very highly owned. Maybe after this game week he'd be low enough, he won't be shown anymore, but I suspect there'd be enough holding on to him. Now, we don't know when he's back. It looks like he could be back before the end of the calendar year, but if he is, then you just buy him back. So because he's so expensive, it's absolutely worth selling him and getting a defender that's going to play, in my opinion. Otherwise, you're just going to be losing money on him. Unless we hear that miraculously he's going to be back in 2-3 weeks' time, but we're not expecting that. Midfielders, Semenyo is still the most important. Even though his net transfer is only 300,000, he's still high enough owned that if he plays and does well, he's going to hurt your rank if you don't own him. He's got Sunderland, Everton, Chelsea, Man United next. Wouldn't be surprised if he got an attacking return against any of those, or even all of those. So I think he's fine to keep. However, a lot of people free hitting this game week are going to sell him and get some more exciting players, which is fine. I wouldn't be free hitting, so it's hard to say what I would do, I guess. So I've not given the free hit much thought other than I don't want to play it. Embremo, he's up by 43,000. Now he's off to AFCON, so we're pretty confident he's playing the next 4 game weeks, which is Palace, West Ham, Wolves, Bournemouth, and they're very nice. So if you've not got him and you can bring him in, he's still worth bringing in. But in the next week or two, it's not going to be so great to bring him in because you know he's going to have to move on. Saka, he's down by just a net of 6,000. He's a very good player. He's got away to Chelsea, so wouldn't expect anything there. But then Brentford, Villa, Wolves, they could do more. Managers that don't have Saka pretty much aren't going to be bringing him in because there are cheaper Arsenal midfielders that look like they're more fun at the moment. Sarr, he's down by 35,000. Even though he's a good player and they've got some nice fixtures, he's just not been returning. He's just nearly been returning. And I guess partly that may be the free hit as well. People aren't wanting him this week at home to Man United. And Day is down by 9,000. Everton, still a perfectly good player though. Rice is up by 54,000. He's got several routes to points and he ticks over quite nicely. He does take one of your Arsenal slots and one of your midfield slots, of course. Nobody on free hit should be buying him this game week. But if he's in your team, he's absolutely fine. Enzo's up by 17,000 because he got 11 points, despite many owners thinking they'd sell him this coming game week, home to Arsenal. Because that 11 pointer, that's enough for some people to bring him in. But Caicedo's down by 100,000 because he didn't even play. But I think he was just rested. He's probably all right. And after Arsenal, there's Leeds, Bournemouth, Everton. So Fernandes is down by just 3,000. He's another player that's perfectly good, ticks along, but he is quite expensive. And there's arguably better midfielders that are cheaper you can get at the moment. And then Eze's up by a massive 273,000 because he got a hat-trick last game week. So if I was wildcarding, I would get Semenyo, I would get Embremo. and I'd probably play 3 in the middle. So I'd probably get Saka, but I may get Rice, I may get Eze, one of those 3. If I was playing safe and I could afford it, it would be Saka. But either the other 2 are perfectly fine. And if Eze does something else in the next game week or 2, he's just going to obviously keep climbing. Second page of midfielders, we got Gakpo. So none of these are going to hurt your rank at all if you don't own them. But he's still high enough owned that I have to show him. So he's got a nice run of fixtures, West Ham, Sunderland, Leeds, Brighton. But Liverpool are rubbish. We don't know what minutes Gakpo is going to play. If we knew Gakpo was going to get 80 plus minutes every game, he would probably be worth having. And then Minte, he's very popular. He's been doing very well recently, up by 133,000. Good player to have. If you're not bothered about having just the popular players, Minte would be a good choice. Grealish, he's down by 56,000. He's quite expensive, 6.7. So a lot of managers, nearly all managers, would rather have Minte at 6.1 than Grealish at 6.7. So Rodgers, he's up by 132,000. He got a couple of goals, I think, last game week. If you're free hitting at home to Wolves, worth getting. Now, there is, of course, a derby. Derby games can be a bit more feisty. But just for a 1 week punt, that's fine. Personally, I wouldn't be getting him long term for sure. If I was free hitting, maybe I'd get him in. But if you want a free hit and get him, that's fine. And then Rangers, he's been net dumped by 74,000. He's not going to hurt your rank at all if you don't have him. And going back just a few game weeks, he was in most teams. And then King, he's just bench fodder. 4.5 million, sits on your bench if you're going to be playing not 5 midfielders. For the forwards, Haaland, even though everyone owns him, net 45,000 managers have brought him in. Crazy. But every point he gets, he's going to be hurting your rank if you don't own him. So the only question is, are you going to be captaining him or not? Home to Leeds, most engaged managers will be captaining him. Then Mateta, he's down by 35,000, but he is still a good player. But the fear is now that Nketiah's back, Mateta's going to get fewer minutes. But the run of fixtures are okay. Man United, Burnley, Fulham. So he's only slightly being sold off. Not a major problem. If you've got him, he's worth having. Absolutely worth keeping. If I was wildcarding this game week, I would probably be getting in Haaland and Mateta and Thiago. 302,000 managers have brought him in net so far. He's got Burnley, then Arsenal, Spurs, then he's got Leeds. 6.5 million. If I was wildcarding, I think the 3 players on the screen just now are the 3 that I'd be getting. João Pedro's been dumped by a net of just over 200,000. He's not going to hurt you as much as Thiago's expected to hurt you this game week. If you owned neither of them, it's Thiago you've got to fear, not João Pedro. There's no way I'd be buying João Pedro at the moment. If I was wildcarding, I wouldn't have him. Then Voltemade, away to Everton. He's going... Oh, he's steady. He's neither bought nor sold. Look at that. I'd have thought he'd be getting dumped. He's not. Newcastle, after Spurs, do have some nice fixtures. Some of you think Spurs is a nice fixture. Welbeck, he's up by 82,000. He ticks along nicely. He's all right to have. I wouldn't be having him, but that's because I'm going for popular players. Nothing wrong with Welbeck. Bowen's down by 20,000, but he's a good player. And now they're playing Callum Wilson, it seems, because they have to admit, okay, we have to play him because he's a good player. Maybe Burns going to get more assists. Then Ekiteke, he's not expected to get many game minutes, so he's absolutely not worth having. I just have to show at least 10 for each position. That's why these lowly owned ones are in here. Mark Gay's bench fodder. Creepy Jr.'s bench fodder. So if I was wildcarding, Haaland, Mateta, Thiago are the 3 that I'll be getting. Regarding the benching order, starting with keepers, chances are you've got Dubravka and another keeper. I would say play the other keeper and bench Dubravka. However, just in case you've got others, this is my suggested benching order. Even though Raya is away to Chelsea, if you've got him, because he's so highly owned, I would suggest you play him. So even though Kelleher, for example, was at home to Burnley, Kelleher's expected to get 4.6 points, Raya's only 3.8. If you get it wrong, Kelleher's only going to hurt you by minus 0.3. Raya's going to hurt you by minus 1.5. So there's a big downside. If you had these 2 keepers, there's a big downside to playing Kelleher if Raya does well. If you play Raya and Kelleher does well, there's not really any downside at all. Then the other keepers in order would be Donnarumma, Pope, Petrovic, Vicario, Roos, Henderson, Sanchez, and then Dubravka's right at the end. The benching order for the other players, I've taken 6 to one side, which we'll talk about for captaincy. So apart from those, this is my suggested benching order, allowing for their ownership levels, their expected points, and how I think they're going to be performing. If you got Fernandes, I'd be playing him away to Palace. Same for Semenyo, Virgil van Dijk, Gakpo. Even though Gakpo's minutes are unsure, they are away to West Ham. If you've still got him and you're using all that money on him, you have to play him. Senesi, Timber, Sarr, Munoz, Gehi, Endaya, Rice, Eze, Welbeck, Minte, Automade, João Pedro, Van de Ven, Richards, Mukele, Enzo, Grealish, Caicedo, Bowen, Ekiteke, Chalobah, Calafiore, Cucurella. And then we have Electric Steve, King, Reindeers, Creeper Jr., Rodon, Goodmanson, Mark Gehi, and Gabriel. But you really want to be selling Gabriel. Regarding the captaincy, Haaland is by far going to be the most popular captain, and he's a good choice. He's expected to be the top scoring player this game week. 7.6 points is his predicted point. It's probably going to be higher than that. If you don't captain Haaland and he does well, that's going to massively hurt your rank, unless the captain you pick happens to do better. However, I try and put 6 captain choices here, so Thiago would also be an alright choice. If you don't have Haaland or you want to do something crazy, Thiago's probably the next best to choose from. Apart from that, you could go Saka, Mbeumo, Mateta, or even Rodgers if you're free hitting. So any of these for your... I normally say any of these for your captain's fine. That's not true. If you got Haaland, captain Haaland. But any of the others are fine for your vice captain. Or if you don't want to go for one of those, your vice captain, one of the green players from the previous screens, they'd also be alright. And there we have my quick thoughts for Game Week 13. There has been a lot of talk about Free Hit 13, but I think quite a few managers who are saying they're going to do it are now cooling on the idea, because they realise there's going to be some highly owned players they won't be picking, and if they do well, that's going to be bad for them. So I do currently think there's going to be a number of free hit managers that are going to get red arrows this week. So the free hit is not for me in Game Week 13. Thank you very much to anyone who's watched it this far. I hope you have a good Game Week 13 weekend. Cheers. Bye.